Aloha, what's up everybody, and welcome to today's presentation. I'm JayDreamerZ. Today we're talking about an aspect of the plasma apocalypse. I like to call it the brainstorm. So what is the brainstorm? I'd like to welcome everybody who's joining me in the chat today, and for those of you who went to my website and bought my brand new keychains, this is your package, and your keychain is being shipped out tomorrow. Looks like these ones go to Mindy and Lisa. So your keychains will be shipped out tomorrow. And a big shout out to my Patreon sponsors, Some Lady and Par. So it's good to have you guys. Thank you so much. Now, the plasma apocalypse. The short version is that our world, our atmosphere, depressurizes. The sky will open up, plasma will come down from below, it'll ground itself, it'll change and reshape the world as we know it. Plasma also comes up from within the earth, geoplasmas erupt. But what does this have to do with the brain? What does it have to do with your brain? And aliens wanting your brains? Well, tune in and listen close, because I'm going to explain it all today on our presentation. So, space brains. We've talked about this a couple of times before, and we're going to talk about it again. So, as you can see right behind me here, I actually have, some images of synapses and neurons and parts of the brain. We're going to do some screen sharing first, and I'm going to share with you guys a theory that I have about the reset, which is a data harvest. It's a data collection, right? And our data from our world in the form of DNA and memories and things of that nature is going to be collected and it's going to be sent elsewhere. So right now I'm getting everything pulled up. I'd like to say hello to everybody in the chat. Good to see you guys. And we will begin today's presentation with this picture. Now you guys have probably seen this picture of Adam, the creation of Adam, God reaching out to touch Adam's finger, who's nonchalantly holding his hand out for God, right? But a lot of people have noticed and pointed out that it looks like God is in a brain. Excuse me. It looks like God is in a brain in this particular painting. If you check it out, you can see behind me that it looks almost like he's inside of this. They make it look like there's a blanket behind him or something, but it's in the shape of an actual brain. I'll jump out of the way so you can see here for a second. So there's God, and he's surrounded by all of his angels, and there's Adam on the earth over there. So God is up in the sky, and he looks to be inside of a brain. A lot of people have made this correlation that it looks like it was done purposefully, right? So God is inside of the brain. Why? Well, because this would be God's home, right? This is heaven. This is the heavens. This is where God lives, is inside of the heavens. So if we make a connection that the heavens are equivalent to the brain, right? Which many people have already done, actually. On the left here, you can see this image, and then on the right, a different image, but they're very similar. On the left, this is supposed to be what they believe brain cells look like when you zoom all the way into the brain. On the right, these are supposed to be what galaxies look like. If you zoom all the way out, you can see that one looks just like the other. They look just like one another here. So let's suppose, right, that we live within what I call the mind of God, right? The mind of God would be more the energetic aspect, the spiritual aspect, but then that manifests itself physically into an actual brain form. So we would live within this mind, or within this brain, which is the greater cosmos, right? So what we have here, this is an image of two different neurons within the brain, and when they get very close together, they create what's called a synapse, right? And this is how information can pass from one world to another world, right? One world, one synapse, one neuron will open up at the tip, and when it opens up, it actually these bubbles open up at the surface. They release all this information that goes in the form of chemicals and electricity, and it floats over to this other world or this other neuron as there is a transfer of information between them. Now, if these were worlds, we should expect this to be reflected in our actual world, especially if everything is fractal and repeating and holographic, and it's the same as above, so below, as within, so without. We should see this in our world, and we do. So I like to go to the movies for examples because I believe that these secrets come out within the media, within movies and songs and stuff. So here we have the movie Inside Out. It's a children's movie, and these characters down here that are all looking out of this window, they represent the emotions inside of a human being, right? And this is where they live. And as they're looking out, you can see these other cities off in the background, just across from them. These cities rest on the tips of neurons. It's the exact same thing as what I just showed you over here. These are the neurons. See the pod type ends that they have? Same thing over here on Inside Out, where we actually have humanoid characters, human-like characters that live inside of the brain. And as you can see, this vast area behind them that looks like labyrinth, that's brain tissue, that's brain matter. And what they're doing is they're showing you that if you shrink down into the brain, if you could zoom into your very own mind, into your very own brain, that you would have worlds upon worlds upon worlds inside of your mind, cosmos inside of your mind that come into fruition simply through your actions and your conscious and subconscious thought. So if we continue along that line of thinking and that reasoning, the brain is constantly full of electricity. It's constantly sending signals here and there, and it branches out like a tree in many places, but the electricity is constantly flowing from one place to another. It's actually carrying information. These are conduits. They're like hallways in your mind. Those hallways, I believe, are like plasma tubes or plasma filaments, very large ones, vortices. They're swirling around and they look like spaghetti, filling your brain, basically. They are the halls of your brain system, and they allow information to pass from one place to another, from where it is developed to where it is needed, right? So this is kind of what you could expect it to look like. This is just an artist's rendition, but if you were to fly through and travel through the quote-unquote space that exists within your very own mind, or the cosmos within your brain, then this is something what space would look like. This is something of what the greater cosmos would look like. Now, we also see this reciprocated. Here's a different version of it, right? You can imagine that this would be like, if you were to peer inside of the brain, it would be full of all of these sort of spaghetti strands, which is the neurons, connecting one to another. However, this is not a picture of the brain. This is a picture of the circuits of time as it is shown in the movie Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, where they travel in a phone booth, a communication device, to go from one place in time to another place in time, right? They are what I call Fractalverse travelers. And as you can see, there's plasma and electricity that is propelling them and moving them from one place to another in these sort of spaghetti strands, these plasma filaments that exist within the mind of God. And here it is in the movie. Whenever they actually travel through it, you can see there's little electrical signals and impulses. This is them when their telephone booth is too filled up. You can see the electricity flying everywhere. They're flying through the mind. This is why the telephone is used in so many movies as a type of portal, right? The Matrix is very popular for showing this type of symbolism. Now, let's use the movies again. We're going to talk about the sacred timeline in the Marvel universe, specifically within the television show Loki that first kind of exposed this. And I have decoded the movie Loki, but this is what the sacred timeline looks like. So within the Marvel universe, each one of these little branches is a different timeline, right? Different Earths, alternate worlds exist. And they look, as you can tell, much like the neurons, right? Much like those plasma conduits that I was talking about that travel, from place to place, passing information along those neurons. Now you could look at this sacred timeline from the Marvel universe. You could see it branches up. Each one of these little filaments is a different timeline, right? They have their own little branches and stuff. And this is what I would expect to see within our very own minds. If I could shrink down right? Just infinitely small, like Ant-Man does. This is also shown to you in the movie Ant-Man. But if you could shrink all the way down, then this is what it would look like beyond our dome, right? If you were to open up and crack open the dome, you would see all of these electrical impulses moving and carrying data and information from one place to another. And it can look very beautiful because it's plasma, right? It's electrical signals in the mind. Here's another version of it. They're looking through a window. This is the actual scene where they zoom in through the window. The window has this sort of eye shape, like a lens or a glass. So this is like the dome above, and you're looking beyond the dome or through the lens, out past whatever lies beyond, which is what I call the Fractalverse. But this is what you would see. You would see the greater universe or multiverse or fractalverse. You would see those synapses. You would see those plasma conduits that connect and transfer energy from one place to another. This is also the greater tree, right? The cosmic tree, an actual cosmic tree whose branches rise up and through all of these alternate worlds, all of these multiverses, and all of these alternate Earths. In the DC universe, so you're probably familiar with Marvel, right, putting out superhero movies, there's also a comic book company called DC. They're more famous for Batman and Superman and those types of superheroes. They have an episode called Crisis on Infinite Earths, and this is what the cover of that looks like. It's a Crisis on Infinite Earths. Hold on, let me jump out of the way. So as you can see here on the cover, it's not easy to see, but you can see all the superheroes. They're all kind of floating about, right? So just floating through space. But you see all of these different versions of Earth, and you can see that there is this magenta plasma filament that is crashing down into the Earth, and it's happening on all of these Earths, all of these infinite versions of the very world where we live, which is within the mind of God. Right? So we would naturally expect to see on the large scale what we see on the small scale. It's scalable. So you could look out beyond the dome on the other side of it, and you would see all of these strands, right? This is also shown to you in the movie Spider-Verse. But you would see all of these strands connecting these different hubs within the mind. Why? Those strands transfer information. Now let's talk about the villain, right? Let's talk about space brains, actually. I just got a donation. Hey, super chat from Eric. Thank you so much, Eric. All right, so let's talk about the space brains, right? The concept of it. When you hear it in a movie, made popular by Stephen King's movie of the same name, right? You think of the villain. Why is that? Because this concept of the mind of God, or a space brain that we all live inside of, it's not really a space brain. I just like to call it that because it's fun. But if you can imagine we live in the mind of God, then we live within the quote-unquote brain of God, right? Somewhere in there, somewhere in the head, right? Now, it's so large, it's basically inconceivable for most people, right? It's just so gigantic. The only thing appropriate that it can be called simply is it. And that's oftentimes what this greater cosmos, or the mind of God, is referred to as, but especially those electrical tendrils that carry and pass along information. They take information from one world, they pass it along through their plasma conduits, and they drop it off into another world. Now, this was also featured in the book A Wrinkle in Time. It says here, at last she realized what the thing on the dais was. It was a brain. A disembodied brain, an oversized brain, just enough larger than normal to be completely revolting and terrifying. A living brain, a brain that pulsed and quivered, that seized and commanded. And this is an excerpt from A Wrinkle in Time. Now, within the book and the movie A Wrinkle in Time, these kids go on this journey, and they meet some fantastic women who help them along, who are these witches. But the antagonist of the book is a brain, and that brain lives in space. It's literally a space brain. Now, this concept of brains from space, or brains from other dimensions, is shown to us time and time again. This one right here is from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from the 80s, the cartoon. This character is called Krang, and he is a type of space brain. He's a bad guy, right? Why is a brain always, typically like the bad guy or whatever? He's from a dimension called X. The reason that he's from dimension X is because the opening in our sky, right? We have a firmament, a dome that goes above our world, and it has an apex dome that dips down like a bowl at the very top, right? Now, people throughout antiquity, there have been times when they could see the firmament because geoplasmas from below, they shoot upwards, they light up the firmament, and the firmament glows, so people could see it. When they looked at the apex dome, or this all-seeing drooping eye, this Humpty Dumpty in the sky, they would see an X that goes across it. Why? Because it's reflecting the Garden of Eden below it, which is cross-sectioned by 4 rivers. Now, this is why Krang is from Dimension X. He's from Nibiru, or the planet of the crossing, or the place to cross over, or the great Sipapu that exists up in the heavens. The Sipapu was the Native Americans' way of saying a stargate, essentially. This is from Doctor Who, a television show over in the England area. This is a character called the Ood. Right? And Ood basically is like this alien-looking creature with tentacles just hanging out of its face, right? Now, the thing about these aliens is they have a hive mind, and they're all connected to this space brain, this gigantic brain. Here's actually Doctor Who standing on this corridor over here on the side. There's a little catwalk, and they're looking down at this gigantic brain that basically controls all of these guys, the Ood, right? Now, the Ood can change. Their eyes can turn red, and they can all collectively become evil, basically, depending on what happens with this space brain, right? So the space brain is sort of controlling many different things. Now, also in Doctor Who, we have the world-renowned bad guys called the Daleks. Daleks look like machines on the outside. On the inside, they're powered by these aliens, which are basically brains with tentacles and one eyeball in the middle. Right? Why is this? This type of symbolism is not just made up. It is something that we remember collectively through our subconscious across the world and across time. We associate one eye, or the Odin, or the opening up there in the heavens, that stargate that droops down from the firmament, like I explained earlier. That is seen as the all-seeing eye in the heavens. That is seen as the gateway and the doorway. That eye will open up as the firmament, the sky, rips open one day, and gigantic plasma tentacles make their way from the plasma sphere that is outside of our world down into our atmosphere. And of course, they have the brain at the top, right? Because the brain is the source, right? There is a source that is connecting all of these plasma tentacles that run throughout the mind of God, we'll say, and they touch every realm, every place. They're responsible for the comings and goings of the information that exists here, which you could look at like a simulation, or you could look at like a brain or a computer program or what have you. Here's another Dalek close up. Here's the one eye, there's the brain at the top, and their little sort of tentacle face and stuff like that. It's just cartoonified imagery. Right? This is what happens when a Dalek becomes human. This is just another type of Dalek. One eye, the brain at the top, the tentacles coming downward, right? And now let's talk about Stephen King, right? Pennywise. Pennywise is not called it. I know a lot of people believe that Pennywise is called it, but he's not. Pennywise is one manifestation, one representation, right? A physical manifestation, a symbolic element. Right? And he symbolizes it. He's dressed up like a clown. In this particular scene, I'm going to change it here, but he's banging his head trying to get through the glass in this adaptation of the movie, right? He needs to get through the glass because that glass is the glass of the lens that is above us, which is the dome and the firmament. Now, Pennywise has a favorite shape that he takes. That plasma above us is Kali. That plasma above us is Shiva, and it's the sleeping waiting god. It's the world destroyer, and it's just waiting for the glass to break. It's waiting for the ice to break the ice, basically. And when the ice is broken, that's whenever people can really talk because telepathy will be reintroduced, but that's also when all kinds of hell breaks loose and the apocalypse happens. Now, Pennywise likes to take this form, a sort of spider form. This is from the movie, right? The reason he takes the shape of a spider, because that is the true shape of the being known as it, which Pennywise represents. The reason they make Pennywise a clown is because whenever our sky opens up, those Fractalverse travelers, animals, and creatures that live in the in-between worlds out there in the liminal spaces of space, they don't have a sun or anything. They just have ambient light in the form of plasma. So they don't need melanin or anything. So oftentimes they come into our world and they're seen as killer clowns or whatnot, right? That's where a lot of the clown symbolism comes from, especially with Nephilim and fallen beings and angels and stuff, right? Pennywise also has what they call the deadlights. When he opens up his face and there's just light on the inside, because this is what it is at its essence, at its core. It is light. It is plasma. It is, pure energy, basically. So whenever Pennywise opens up his face and people look into the deadlights, they float up into the sky. Why? He doesn't need them to float or anything, but it's an essential element. It's essential to who this character represents. He represents the depressurization when that clown bursts his head through the glass, which is our sky breaking open, our atmosphere depressurizing, getting sucked out, which increases buoyancy down here on the ground on Earth. So the people become, they become lightweight and they float up towards the rupture, which is in the dome above, right? Also known as the rapture. Now, also just to use some more pop culture references, this is from Monty Python and the Search for the Holy Grail. They run into these knights, which represent like a form of nobility, right? And the knights say ni, which basically means no in ancient languages. So they represent nobility, telling everybody no, 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 no. And the one thing that the knights are afraid of, the only thing that they're afraid of, is a word. He says, it is one of the words that the Knights of Ni cannot hear. You see that? And it is the word it. The word is it. It represents those plasma filaments that come into our world, but also we have to keep in mind that they don't just appear, they're not just segmented, they're connected beyond the dome. Before the dome fixes itself and it cuts them off and then they're trapped in our world, at least a portion of those plasma filaments are trapped in our world, which is also seen as like some sky god getting a haircut. Basically, this is the god of barbers and stuff like that too, or barbarians, you could say, or Berbers. But anyways, that's what it represents, right? It represents those plasma filaments that come in and they separate and they move about like spiders across the land. This is also the grandmother spider story within Native American traditions. So that takes us to the plasma filaments, the spaghetti looking strands and whatnot takes us to Cousin It. Right? This is Cousin It, as made popular by the Addams Family television shows. Cousin It is just a bunch of hair. At least that's what it seems like. But symbolically, he is called It. Not because it's a funny thing, because no one knows what he is or what it is or whatever. It's because of it's all of these little filaments, all these little hairs or whatever you want to call these, the spaghettis. These represent the plasma that is out there in the cosmos, connecting things, which brings us to the spaghetti god, or the spaghetti monster, which is also the god within Pastafarianism, which is an actual real religion or belief system. So here's the spaghetti god. Now this is interesting, the spaghetti monster, right? The spaghetti monster is allegedly made up, right? It started off as a joke. Somebody just made up, like, oh yeah, what if I just worship a flying spaghetti monster? They think that they made this up, but they didn't. All they did was they opened up their mind, tried to be very creative for a moment, and they tapped into an ancient truth, which is what happens oftentimes when people use the medium of wonder, childlike wonder, and creativity and things of that nature to balance out our logical side and our rational side and our analytical side and our mathematical side, right? So this flying spaghetti monster in this particular drawing happens to play the role of God in the exact same way. It's just cartoonified. This is basically if we equate this to the first image, right? The first one that I showed you guys of Adam and God, right? It's basically the same thing if God is actually in a brain, and the brain is full of these filaments, these plasma filaments and pathways and hallways and things of that nature. It becomes the ultimate spaghetti god or spaghetti monster, or however you want to see it, flying spaghetti monster, right? And that's what it is. And that's actually real, right? It's not actual real spaghetti, obviously, but it's striations, it's filaments, it's hairs that are flying in from above in the form of plasma, which connects every world. It transfers energy and information from one world to another. Now, here's a clip from the Loki series, right? Marvel, I was talking about the sacred timeline. Well, when they get too close to this sacred timeline, they go through what they call spaghettification. They basically turn into some kind of strands of reality that they call spaghetti. So this is shown to us time and time again. Here's Loki right here. He's being surrounded by all the spaghetti that's creeping up on him. You can see the sacred timeline on the television in the background, which also sort of acts as like the one eye symbolism, but that's another story. But that takes me to one of my favorite songs. Okay, this song chills me out. I'm always listening to this song. It's by a group called 311, and it's called Amber, right? Whoa, amber is the color of your energy. Well, check out the lyrics to this song. It starts off by saying, brainstorm, take me away from the norm. When this storm, this tempest, okay, there will be a worldwide storm. So I like to say this stuff in jest. I like to say this stuff, you know, because it's entertaining. It's fun to be larger than life. But I'm also extremely and dead serious. Okay, I'm not joking when I'm talking about the plasma apocalypse. I'm not joking when I say that there's going to be these filaments of light that string down from the sky and from the heavens, and people will see it, and it will change the world as we know it. I'm definitely not joking. But let's see what 311 has to say. Which, by the way, just the band name and everything itself is just interesting. Brainstorm, take me away from the norm. So when the brainstorm comes, the worldwide tempest, the worldwide low-pressure event, because the sky is depressurizing, right? It is the brainstorm. The sky opens up and the tentacles, we can see the neurons and the electricity and stuff. And this data harvest begins. Take me away from the norm. So everything's normal right now, but it's all going to become abnormal, and a new normal will be introduced after the world has changed. Now, what else do they say? Take me away from the norm. I've got to tell you something. So the person who's singing this song is letting you know it's a secret. They've got to tell you something. This is something really important. This song has nothing to do with love, or you know, it's like a love song to a girl, or I just feel really good, so I'll write a song about how good I feel. No. This is ancient secrets. Now, he says, this phenomenon, I had to put it in a song. So, this brainstorm is this phenomenon, which is a word people use when they don't really understand how something works or what it is. It's basically magic. It's a phenomenon. It's a strange event. This phenomenon, I had to put it in a song. Now, let's see what else they say. And it goes like, whoa, amber is the color of your energy, right? So that's referring to, I'm not going to break down the entire song right now, but that's referring to the golden age, which comes after this brainstorm. And I'm going to tell you exactly why, scientifically, why we go through a golden age after this apocalyptic cycle that's on the way, and why the sky turns gold color and all that stuff, right? But let's get back to the space brains for a moment, right? Symbolically, these aliens out there, and sometimes zombies, right, are depicted as wanting your brain. They're after your brain. They've come to take your brains. This is from a movie where they had this gigantic insect alien, where they actually call them bugs, because they are bugs. They're just gigantic phantazoid bugs. Bugs inside the earth are way bigger. Bugs outside the earth are way bigger. And when we go through this next cycle, gigantism will return to this world, and the bugs on the surface will also return to being very gigantic. But this brain bug stabs its little sucker into this dude's head, and it sucks out his brain, which goes through his little leg there, and he basically eats his brain, right? Zombies also will want your brain. And zombies will happen. There will be a zombie apocalypse. That's all a part of the plasma apocalypse, because that energy that's rushing up through the earth basically stimulates all of the cells, all of the people's dead body material and their bones and stuff at a genetic level, and it brings them back to life as it puts them back together, and they come to life. They can't die. There will actually be a time of no death during this event. It will be near impossible for anybody to die because there's so much spirit in the atmosphere, which is these tentacles, these plasma striations and whatnot. So this is from another movie, Beyond Skyline, where the aliens collect and harvest brains. Right? What is this association with? Tentacles in space, space tentacles, oftentimes connected to some sort of an alien creature that looks like a brain, right? Or there's some sort of brain connection or whatever. It's because it's a data harvest, right? You see how, like, in this poster for Beyond Skyline, they have this UFO that's up there in the heavens. It's got this inverted dome underneath it, right there, which is that same inverted dome I was telling you about that I call the apex dome, which is the top of the firmament. So for all intents and purposes, this is the firmament, the spaceship. This is the apex dome. This is at the center of the world. This is a blue beam of geoplasmas that's erupting straight up into the heavens. This blue beam is symbolized as two different things, but I'm just going to say it's the good blue beam for now. But anyways, if I zoom in, you can see that there's all these people. All these dots, these are people getting sucked up into the UFO so they can collect their brains. So the aliens can collect just everybody's brains for some reason, right? So we've got a blue beam symbolism floating, people floating up into the atmosphere because it's depressurizing. Whenever the atmosphere depressurizes, buoyancy increases. Everything just starts to float. It becomes weightless. This is also your rapture, or the rupture of the sky. The sky ruptures. The atmosphere depressurizes, buoyancy increases, the winds help to pick people up and lift them off the surface. They get blown up into the heavens, sucked up by the sky god Kronos, like the last strand of spaghetti. All these people getting sucked up into the heavens, into specifically the apex dome, which is featured in this movie here by the alien craft. There's also other blue beams as well. What are these blue beams all about? So oftentimes those strands of spaghetti up in the heavens, they're depicted in a red spectrum. They're drawn as magenta, the color out of space. They were referred to in a movie, right? There's a movie called The Color Out of Space. And that's what this is. These are the old ones, the old gods, you know, like Cthulhu types, right? That's why you have like the face and the snakes coming off of it, or tentacles or tendrils coming off of the face and stuff, just like I showed you with the Ood. Well, here's a clip. Here's just a still image, a picture from the series that was made after the movie called The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance. And in that show, they show you this central castle, which basically represents Mount Meru at the center of the world. They have all of these blue, healthy, healing beams of energy. I call them geoplasmas, erupting straight up from the ground. They're not coming from above. They shoot up and then they separate into these T shapes, or they spread their wings and they become these sort of auroras. And they're seen all over the place. Right? As you can clearly see here, if I move myself, you can see there's a whole bunch of them in the background. Here's some different pictures. Now up above, when this happens, this event happens, you have all these geoplasmas that are being released from inside of the earth all over the place. This is called the Age of Light, which is how the Freemasons keep track of time. They don't say AD, BC, any of that. They say AL, which is Anno Lucius, which means the Age of Light, right? The Age of Resistance, you could say, because things are going to change. But anyways, up in the sky, up in the heavenlies, you can see the same sacred timeline, right? These are the plasma filaments from above that are moving around as the sky becomes electromagnetically charged, and you can see the two different forces meeting one another. You can see the geoplasmas in the form of these columns and pillars and poles that shoot straight up into the sky, and then they branch out, just like the Irminsul or the Anglo-Saxon world tree, just like the cruciform or the crucifix of Jesus or the tree of Odin, etc. These positive energy shoots up from the earth. The negative energy, or the bad guys in the situation, would be the cosmic plasma that comes down into our world, carrying with it and shooting off of it high doses of gamma rays and radiation of all sorts, right? Plus, these ones that are coming down from above, typically they have the ability to petrify, to create things, to lift up mountains, and reshape the world. But we have this meeting between positive and negative. The negative is coming into this world, simply put, because there is a gigantic plasma filament that wraps around the dome. And the light from that plasma filament passes through the lens of the dome, and it projects little stars and moons and planets and even our sun into our sky, right? But then there are the plasma underneath, the positively charged, the good spirit, the good energy comes from the earth itself, and it erupts in the form of these pillars of positively charged energy, which depolarize the world and lead us into a positive age. Literally an age where our world up here on the surface is filled with positive energy. Way more positive energy than we have today. Today it's mostly negative, okay, or the season of Satan or Satan's little season, but that will flip after this event, and our world will be filled for 1,000 years, we'll say, with good positive energy that is actually coming up from below. Now, let's go back to the brain analogy and the mind of God analogy. Let's suppose we live inside of a brain, like an actual physical brain, right? Within the actual physical brain, we have something, an event, known as an action potential, right? I'm gonna explain this simply put. This long thing down here at the bottom with this sort of octopus with one eye in the middle, which is, where you get all of that symbolism from. This is a neuron. These are sort of what neurons look like. They have this really long stem or hallway or underworld, and then they connect to the main hub over here. It's got little branches and tendrils and dendrites and whatnot. Well, let me jump back in. Now, let's go back. I want to use a good visual for this one. So let me get that synapse pulled up. Remember this one? So this is the synapse. One world, another world, for all intents and purposes. I'm going to make it very simple, right? When one world suffers their apocalypse, which means their sky opens, however you see that, I think it's a firmament, I think it's a dome. When the sky opens for this world down here, right, it will release chemicals and electricity, and everything will get sucked up through the depressurization like we saw, and it will be received by this corresponding world across from it, right? It's just transferring information from one world to another world. Now, after this happens in the brain, right? This usually happens right before someone makes a decision about something, right? You can go left or you can go right. You can do good or you can do bad. After this is done, if it's done in the right way, then we reach something within neuroscience called the action potential. The action potential is after this apocalyptic event happens on this macrocosmic scale. And this is happening on many neurons, not just one neuron, right? On infinite Earths, so to speak, to use the comic book terminology. After this happens, the stem portion up here of the neuron, it floods with positive energy. It just replaces it like positive reinforcement or something, right? This is called the action potential. And you can see down here at the bottom, all these little plus signs. You see that? Na, which is sodium, that's probably where the salt in our ocean comes from, is my guess. But our world floods with these sodium ions and other positively charged ions, as you can see over here. And it just floods all the way up through from this side to the other side. It goes down this hallway, this represents Sheol or the underworld, right? Our world would be up here. And it floods through the underworld and it comes all the way out and it shoots upward towards the surface where we live, right? I don't know why I disappeared. But anyways, that's what's happening, right? This is a theory. This is my theory, at least. The way I see it is if we live within the mind of God, and if we were built in the image of our Creator, that means that I have a mind. That means I have a brain. And if I'm anything like God or similar to God or made in God's image, that means the potential exists. It is possible that if you were to zoom into my brain all the way in, microcosmic upon microcosmic, right? That you would end right back up here, right where we are, because it's repeating, it's holographic, and it's looping basically over and over and over again. It's just infinite, right? Like a toroidal field, just looping in on itself over and over again. So what does that mean? That means that I have cosmos within cosmos right here in my very own mind, right? Now there's a time differential within the cosmos. And or if you compare the time that passes at the microscopic scale to here, regular JayDreamerZ and my actual head and my mind and stuff, in the time it takes me to do this live stream, these worlds within my mind would have gone through thousands and thousands of years, okay? Maybe even millions of years. I don't know how long the live stream is going to be, but there's a time differential between the microscopic, which exists right now in my very own mind, which is why it's so important for us to choose the best possible path, because your path is affecting the entire cosmos within your mind, right? How you treat your body, how you treat other people. You're shaping those worlds by how you live your life. Yeah, so anyways, inversely, right? We are on the microcosmic scale. We are already there. We are the Who's that live in Whoville that's located at the tip of a snowflake, according to the Dr. Seuss stories, right? So all of this that you're seeing now is there. I'm broadcasting now from the microcosmic portion of the Fractalverse within your mind, within your brain, within the greater version of you's brain, God's brain, okay? So we exist on a microscopic scale. To us, it's just normal. We don't see us as microscopic, but when we consider the vast cosmos and how great and large it is, and all of these spaghetti strands of plasma and light and plasma filaments and halls and subways, you know, it's symbolized in many different ways, like subways and trains, and especially flying trains or whatever, magic trains. That's we would look up and we would wonder what's out there. All we have to do is look in to know what is out there, right? But because most of us don't know what is out there, we will name the entity that is out there it, simply it, which is interesting too, because a lot of businesses have in IT, right? They have IT departments, right? Technology departments and stuff. Well, that's appropriate because that's what it is. It's a transfer of information. It is technology of a type, of a form, okay? Or you could see it as such. But anyway, I think, action potential. I actually want to read this to you guys here. So I was talking about the action potential and how like all of our world will flood with positive energy, just in the same way that the neurons in the mind will flood with positive energy after a synaptic event or after an apocalypse, basically. It says here, a neuron is literally flooded with positive energy, or it's not literally flooded with positive energy. What happens in a brief influx of positively charged ions. Now, this is ChatGPT. It says it's a brief influx of positively charged ions during an action potential. In English, what that means is their world within the neuron is flooded with positive energy. ChatGPT is trying to minimize it and say, oh, it's brief. Like this happens like within a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a second. But like I said, that's inconsequential because there's a time differential between us and how fast it flickers in our mind and how long that event lasts within the mind. If we shrink ourselves all the way down, you will experience it lasting much longer, I promise you. So here's what it says. Resting state. Inside of the neuron is more negative than the outside of the neuron. That's because there's more K, positively charged K. What is K? I forgot. K chemical. Boom. Oh, potassium. That's right. All right. So there's more positively charged potassium ions and more positively charged sodium ions outside, plus proteins that are negatively charged on the inside. The signal arrives, which is the synaptic event, which you could say is the apocalypse. Okay? Neurotransmitters bind to receptors on the next neuron. This opens ligand-gated ion channels. This is just a fancy way of saying the sky opens and the earth opens up. Okay? All of the things that are blocked, all of the pathways and gates and stargates and terrestrial earth rabbit holes and whatever that go down into the hollow earth, those are all opened up. They open up and they release all this positively charged energy up through the ground, right? Positive ions enter if the signal is excitatory. The sodium ion channels open. Sodium ions rush inside because it's pulled in electrically. Inside is negative. It is pulled in by diffusion. There's more sodium ions outside than inside. This reduces the negativity inside of the neuron. This is polarizing too. This is why cancer will be done away with. Okay? If you polarize the human body and you flood it, if you shower in cold plasma, if you just stand in a room that's filled with cold plasma, like you're in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid per se, I don't know, I just make something up. What happens is your cells, they polarize, right? They become more positively charged. Now, all of those cells that are cancerous are close to being positive, right? But a healthy cell is actually fully negative. So whenever a healthy cell gets a little too close to being positive, then it becomes cancerous. So they have a self-destruct mechanism. Whenever they become fully positive, they just self-destruct, right? So this event is polarizing, which means it will also, eradicate sicknesses and diseases and bacteria and all kinds of stuff. It's a very cleansing event. This reduces the negativity inside of the neuron. The threshold is reached. Once this point is crossed, voltage-gated sodium ion channels pop open. That means the gates of the underworld open up for us, okay? If we live inside of a cell, okay? Which I believe we do. I'm just saying, that's my own perspective and just something for you to chew on, something for you to consider. The earth opens up all of its inner earth portals, all of this inner earth energy in the form of electricity and chemicals. They ionize, they become electrified, and they rush up to the surface. We see this up here on the surface as these beams of light, that pillars that shoot up into the high into the sky. I call these places where the pillars erupt places of power, right? They shoot up into the heavens, they branch out into these T shapes. People interpret these in all kinds of different ways, but they saw these in the ancient world, and they drew them, and they carved them out in petroglyphs and on rocks and on cave walls. They painted this. Now, albeit, this right here is fantasy. This is from a movie or whatever, but it's just a more modern version of what people actually saw, and they drew it on the cave walls. They carved it out in rock. This is the brainstorm. This is the storm that causes our world to depressurize. It causes a tempest the world across. This is on the way right now, okay? The sky will crack open. It will open up. There'll be a loud noise followed by silence, because there will just be a vacuum as all of the atmosphere is getting sucked up into the heavens, right? Things start to float. They start to lift up into the air. We see blue beams of energy rising up from the earth and these pillars and these poles all over the place. Otherworldly creatures and otherworldly Fractalverse travelers from other places who have an advanced degree of technology, they will come into our world and land on rock, with using their rockets and their technology and stuff. Otherworldly creatures will float down into our world. Otherworldly animals and insects and stuff, they will come down into our world, just floating on down as the atmosphere reaches equilibrium and the buoyancy reaches equilibrium once more. And this is an entire brainstorm. A brainstorm is whenever you put all of your ideas together, right? You just smash a whole bunch of things together. That's literally the description of Ragnarok, the Norse concept of the end of the world, or the reset, or the apocalypse. It's when every single possibility comes together at once, right? The denizens who live within the hollow earth, they come up to the surface. Those Fractalverse creatures, they come down Sweetness, what's up, Sweetness? Welcome to my channel. Hey, I just want to say thank you to everybody that supports my work. If you want to support my work, jump over to my Patreon. You can also join my 24/7 chat that's on my Patreon channel, and check out a lot of my videos there. If you want more visuals like this, I highly recommend going to my website, JayDreamerZ.com, and then clicking on the tab that says Ancient Oblivion, and then go down to where it says the Fractalverse. It's got everything that I just explained to you here, explained in detail with movies and visuals and pictures and music and all kinds of fun stuff. Yeah, that's about all I have for today. So I just want to say a heartfelt thank you to all of my support that's out there. All the people that make it possible for me to do this full-time as my job. I'm honored, and I'm excited to see you guys in the next episode. Until then, I'm JayDreamer saying good vibes and goodbye.